ReCore is the biggest case of blue balls a game is ever going to give you. Each and every aspect of the gameplay is built on great ideas, and while it starts off with potential, the further into the game we get, the more we see how little that potential is actually capitalized on. Hey fellow nerds, welcome to my first ever gameplay analysis. This is going to be a multiple part series where I break down each aspect of gameplay in ReCore. Part 1 is combat. When starting the game, I was actually really into ReCore's combat. The ideas weren't half bad, and I was interested to see how the developers would improve upon them. Jewel has a recharging health bar, one that when lowered takes a long time to go back up if she doesn't get out of combat. She has a dodge that's kinda half-assed and will only work some of the time due to most enemy attacks having a ridiculously strong lock-on. And then she could double jump. The only weapon we directly control, Jewel's rifle, is an automatic that shoots out the 3 primary colors as well as white, based on which D-pad button is pressed. Each color also applies a status effect, though they really don't do much aside from a basic stun, slow, and damage over time. Enemy core bots can also have these effects applied to their attacks. If Jewel gets hit with one, you can get out of it either by mashing A, spinning the stick, or dashing. In order to defeat an enemy core bot, you want to be shooting them with the same color that their core is. If the enemy core is a secondary color, the player can use either primary color that makes up that secondary color to defeat them. Jewel's rifle can also fire up a charged shot by holding down right bumper and releasing it at the desired level of charge. Doing so ends up taking out a decent chunk of the recharging ammo bar, but it does a solid amount of damage to the enemy core bot, as well as a slight area of effect, though I have found that it's usually better to just attack with one of my bots and keep the constant automatic fire going in order to keep the enemy bot's shields down. There's also a combo meter that goes up as long as you keep damaging enemies. As your combo gets higher, your damage raises a little bit as well, though never enough to where it would help you win a fight you would otherwise lose, so I wouldn't advise relying on it too much. I can't help but feel there was a missed opportunity here by only allowing Jewel one weapon. This game is just screaming for more. Watch some of this combat footage and tell me ReCore wouldn't benefit from a shotgun type weapon that would bounce the enemy core back, as well as do some extra damage up close. Or how about a powerful bolt action rifle that stuns the enemy, and then a quick cooldown before the next shot is ready? There are no ammo types, so all that would need to be done is give each weapon their own cooldown lengths, and they could easily incorporate the color system into these other weapons as well. It just feels like lazy game design if you ask me. As the game goes on and the enemies get more powerful, the rifle doesn't really follow suit, as leveling it up hardly does anything aside from a small damage boost. At the very least, new weapons would have injected some variety into a game that would really benefit from some, as combat gets rather boring over time. Jewel does have one more way to hold off enemies though, in the form of her extractor, which is basically a glorified grappling hook that you can only use in combat. If you look at the health bars of each enemy core bot, you'll see there is a white segment that stands out from the black segments. Each black segment you clear stuns the bot, while getting the health bar into that white segment allows Jewel to perform a core extraction. What this means is that the enemy core will be stolen and placed into your inventory to level up your core bots back at your base. When prompted, a press of the right stick puts Jewel into an extraction minigame. Here you must pull the right stick back in order to get some weird-ass knob to the end of your line. If you pull at the same time as the enemy core bot, the line will start turning red, and if you keep pulling, it will eventually turn white and then snap. This is a pretty nifty attack at first, until later on the novelty of just pulling the stick back when the enemy isn't pulling back becomes a bother rather than an innovative mechanic. The only way the game varies it up is adding in a timer in the form of electricity that slowly comes down the line, and even that hardly has any effect. I think it would have been sort of cool if there were different strengths of grappling hooks, or maybe some core bots that have you pull in different directions instead of always just pulling back on the stick. But what do I know? I've only been playing video games for 20 years. Stealing a robot's core kills it, though I usually found it faster for me to just keep shooting instead of opting to extract. I recommend only extracting when the robot is high level compared to your current level, and actually worth the core, as Jewel can get damaged during extraction. If your combo is really high, or if the enemy core bot is distracted and doesn't see Jewel, a prompt saying instant extract will go up. If you go to extract, Jewel will instantly pull the core out of the bot, causing an explosion damaging surrounding core bots, yet also ending your combo. I try to do this a lot during dungeons, as enemies are usually grouped closer together during them. Now, you would imagine I would keep going into more detail about the character we play as and how her combat moves expand and develop throughout the game, right? Well, you're wrong. That's it for her. Fucking stupid, right? Jewel's combat set sounds cool at first, but when it never develops beyond this, you really start to wonder what they were thinking here. You thought she may have some sort of melee attack. Well, fuck you, you're wrong again. Why should the player be able to give themselves some breathing room? How about a dodge roll instead of that stupid dash? Seriously, sometimes you get absolutely bombarded by enemies and there's no way out. A Dark Souls-esque roll with some invincibility frames or something would have really benefited this game. But Max, there has to be more to the combat than that. You whine at me for some reason, as if it's my fault. Well, actually, you're in luck, because this time you're right. There is more to the combat, in the form of your little robot sidekicks, the core bots. At any given time, the player has their choice of 2 core bots to fight with. You start off with just Mac the dog core bot, and eventually get Seth the crawler core bot, and then Duncan, the UFC tank fighter that's actually pretty damn weak for his size, even accounting for the fact that he's made out of goddamn metal core bot. You can eventually switch each of the cores in any body you want, carrying their stats over while still being able to use that body's ability outside of combat. There are 4 different body types, which equals out to 12 different combinations of core and body. During combat, the core bots provide a nice breather when Jewel is about to die. You can press Y when locked onto an enemy, and your partner will attack. There's a short cooldown, and then it can be done again and again until your amount of uses runs out. The core bots do some pretty high damage, and if you keep them upgraded, it almost gets to the point where they feel overpowered. Since there are no difficulty settings in ReCore, there's really no way around that. The idea of challenging combat sort of goes away once these bots are at a decent level. I thought about it more, and I realized I actually love that they get overpowered, because then I can get out of combat quicker. I usually have them attack when I'm extracting, as they'll kill the enemy core bot, and I will instantly get the core without even needing to play the extraction minigame. If you ask me, a game that features combat so shitty that I can't even wait till it's over is probably not a very good game in the first place. There really is no need to have a limited amount of uses on a core bot's attack either. I've never run out of them. It just seems like a random tacked on feature used to make the combat seem deeper than it really is. One last form of attacking is switching out your current bot with the other one while locked onto an enemy. You can do so by pressing the left bumper, and it will actually do quite a bit of damage. About as much as you would guess shooting a ton of steel from space into another ton of steel would do. This is another move I'll use when trying to extract quickly or if I'm almost dead and need a breather. That's it, by the way. There's no more to the combat moveset than this, and all of this is presented to you pretty early on in the game. Also, the enemies in ReCore are great examples of some of the laziest design I've ever seen in a game. This is a first-party exclusive, folks. Aside from a few standouts, basically every single enemy is some multi-legged weird robot that either shoots or just hits you. Like everything else in this damn letdown, after seeing the first few, I was super excited to fight more. After finally seeing what that more is, I would rather resort to playing something like Duke Nukem Forever. Critically panned, but that thing at least has a trickle of creativity when it comes to enemy design. All except one class of enemy are just variations of the 4 base bots that fight alongside you, and then that last class is a literal tank. The bestiary says that there are 33 different types of base enemy. In reality, there are 5. The other 28 are just different colored versions of the core 5. Quality design here. Also, what the hell are unique rogue core bots? These are literally the exact same enemies, but with extra health and damage, a name, and then given a non-primary color core. Like, I can't even make this up. Games that have little creativity in their enemies generally make up for it by having creativity in how to take them down. Tomb Raider's enemies are mostly human, but you have bows and guns and grenades and melee and environmental and stealth and more. Assassin's Creed, Batman, hell, even Minecraft has more ways to take out enemies, and the combat isn't even the main mechanic in that game. ReCore does score some creativity points in the design of its core bites. These little bots range from bats that swarm you, to ones that form electric walls, to mines that burrow and then jump out to scare you. However, taking one look at the bestiary shows that they too are just many variations on not very many base designs. Also, they really just serve to distract you for a few seconds, and they're usually dealt with pretty quickly. It's almost as if Armature and Concept didn't think we would notice the enemies and bosses are recolored versions of the things we've been staring at since the game started. I almost feel insulted by how shitty the enemy design is. Thanks for watching part 1. If you enjoyed, maybe leave a like at the bottom. If you want more, hit that subscribe button. Also, comment and let me know what you think. Part 2 will be coming soon, focusing on the movement and exploration in the game, and I promise it'll be a bit more positive. Until next time, nerds.